How's it going? Come on, we could do better than that. We're in New York. How's everyone doing? There we go, there we go. Super honored to be here. I'm Katy Fernandez, Chief Content Officer at Together, fastest growing women sports media company. Super honored to be joined here with some incredible panelists. I will start with you, Emily, if you don't mind introducing yourself and walking us a little bit through your journey at the intersection of, commerce, sports, and culture, and then we can go to you, April, and Natalie.
Yeah, hi everybody, happy to be here. I'm Emily Arel. I'm the president of Mitchell & Ness, which if you're from Philly, you know the brand very well. I've been working in retail since I could see above the counter in my dad's store, and that was a long time ago. So I've been working at the center of the consumer for a very long time. But my background is Target, Gap, Old Navy, Amazon, Casper, and then I found myself in the sports business a little under a year ago when I joined Mitchell & Ness and the Fanatics family. And I think this intersection of sports and culture and fashion, which we'll talk a lot about, is really interesting and really fun to be a part of. I'm excited to be a part of something that it really shapes the way people live their lives and is a big part of their community. And I was telling somebody earlier, I didn't understand the power of Mitchell & Ness until I joined the brand and started wearing like hats and jackets to the airport. And never do I not get stopped by somebody who wants to tell me a story about the brand and what it meant to them as a kid. And that, I think, is what that intersection is all about.
I love that. What about you, April?
I'm the COO of Smack Entertainment. We are a talent management, licensing, and production company. We have a roster of current NFL athletes, former NFL athletes that are now broadcasters, some musicians, and other entertainers. Anyone from Stephon Diggs to DK Metcalf, Michael Strahan, and Deion Sanders. And then we have some brands that we built with those talents. So Michael Strahan's brand has suits and sportswear and licensed apparel and home, and his brand's been around 10 years now. And we launched Wear by Erin Andrews in 2019 to give women more fashion-forward fan apparel, and we have fan apparel across just about every major league, sports league. My history is I sort of grew up at Condé Nast in that Devil Wears Prada era. Although I did not work at Vogue, I was at Glamour and Self Magazine. And then more recently, just before I joined Smack, I was at IMG Fashion, where I oversaw Fashion Weeks globally. So Made Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, Fashion Week Australia, Fashion Week in Tokyo, and Shenzhen Fashion Week in China. So I have a lot of luxury fashion experience, and throughout all of those years, we saw this intersection of sports, culture, and fashion happening in the front row, and we'll get into that a little bit today, but happy to have made the crossover into sports, and at Smack, we are combining all of those things, fashion, sports, media, music, and culture.
Amazing. Thank you so much, April. And I have to actively stop myself from screaming like, Young Moolah, baby, every single time I see Natalie, so bear with me here. Natalie, could you just talk to us a little bit about yourself and sort of how you got into this amazing business and co-founded it?
Absolutely. So I'm the founder and CEO of Moolah Kicks. We are the brand in women's basketball. We make high-performance basketball sneakers that are fit specifically for female basketball players. We've been in business a little bit over 5 years now. We're one of the fastest growing footwear brands where we're in 650 Dick's Sporting Goods stores. We're headlined by Courtney Williams in the WNBA. Raise your hand if you know the Stud Buds. Y'all, clap it up. We have over 100 NIL athletes that we've worked with, including some of the players here at Columbia. So again, clap it up for Columbia women's basketball. We'll probably see all you guys at a game later this year. And we've had over 150 AAU teams wear our sneakers. So every single thing that we do is to elevate, see, and celebrate women's basketball. And of course, it starts with performance footwear that's fit specifically for her.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time this morning. I know how critical it was for me to hear from incredible experts like all of you in this field. So I don't take your time for granted because I know you're all very busy. As a way of background, has anyone ever seen an Everyone Watches Women's sports shirt? Yeah. If you've seen it, you've experienced together. So that's the way that we sort of intersect in the commerce business, even though we're a women's sports media company. Emily, you guys have a tremendous legacy that should be honored and highlighted. And I'm curious to get your perspective on how you partner and how you choose and select those partners so you assure that it cuts through and lands authentically the way that you and the business want it to.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why I love the brand Mitchell & Ness is we've been around over 120 years. There's not a lot of American brands who have been around that long. Our country's not that old. And so there's real nostalgia and history there. And so with a brand like that, you really have to take care that you stay in the lane that makes sense to the consumer and don't veer too far. Now the brand has a very interesting history. It started making golf and tennis equipment in 1904, found its way into hip hop culture in the 90s, and then is what it is today. And so it's really found its way through culture as other brands have come in and out. I think when I look at collabs, which we do a lot of, we just dropped a Billie Eilish collab about a week ago. That is, I can't say fire. My kids say it's embarrassing, but it is fire. And you should go and check it out. But we do a lot of collabs, and it's part of what brings the brand heat. And we have athletes and celebs coming to us all the time that want to do something with us. What's important is that it feels like the brand. It feels authentic. And that you look at it and you say, that makes sense. All of us have seen collabs. There's a lot of them happening in the food space right now that feel very strange. And so that's not the reaction you want. And sometimes after you've just been doing this a while, you just know in your gut if it's right or not. But I'll give you a real example. We did a collab with Lil Wayne for the draft this year. It was amazing from a commercial perspective. But the reason it worked is because he's famously a huge Green Bay Packers fan, and the draft was in Green Bay. So that made sense. If we did a draft day collab with Lil Wayne and the draft was in Minnesota, that would have felt like, what is this for? Why are we doing this? And so I think it's really important that the collabs are always 1 + 1 = 3. And you're not just saying, here's a famous person and here's a brand and let's slap something together, because that doesn't feel good and is not what we want our brand to represent. So that's a little bit of how we take a lot of time to think about what could this look like for the brand, what could it bring for them, what can it bring for us, and how do we do this together? And a lot of times, candidly, the most commercial collabs are not actually right for our brand. And so you just have to be very thoughtful about what makes sense for the DNA, because one wrong turn can have big repercussions for a brand.
Absolutely. One of the things I love about Mitchell & Ness is that you all have this tremendous legacy, and yet you continue to iterate on it with a lot of intentionality and thought, which definitely shows. I'm a huge fan of the vintage throwbacks, personally. Speaking of intentionality, I think, Natalie, you've been super serving a very specific and clear audience, and in speaking to you or anyone who gets the honor to feel your energy, it's very clear that you balance that in every decision that you make for your business. Can you walk me through how you balance the decisions on the design of the shoes to what you've promised those who are ultimately receiving them and wearing them?
Yeah, everything we do is in service of women's basketball. And our core audience is really middle school and high school women's basketball players, girls basketball players. And so I think most businesses, no matter what you're in, we always say everyone's in the service industry, because you have to think, how can I deliver the best possible experience to whoever our core is? And everything we do is to elevate the performance of female athletes. And so how we do that is by asking them. That's how the company was started. And sorry, my mic is like messing with the, I know. That's why she's gonna say, she's gonna do the moolah jingle. But it started, when I first started the brand, I went to Boston College, and I stood outside of Conti Forum, which is our arena, and I actually polled over 200 girls that walked into the game, and I said, what do you like about your shoes? What don't you? And at the time, I had no idea what I was doing, right? I was 22 years old, but that practice has continued, where even today, we ask 100 to 200 players in middle school and high school what colors they like the best, what they want to name the colors, okay? This one is named Cotton Candy. That was decided on Instagram a few days ago. So we continually check in with our middle school and high school audience to see what feels like them, because ultimately that's what this brand is for. They should feel a great sense of pride and agency in every decision that we make, and the easiest thing to do is put the options in front of who you're aiming to serve and just ask.
I love it. I have aged out slightly, not by much, from your core demo. My niece will like to argue otherwise, but I'm a huge fan and love that you're making a lot of your decisions, and your scalability shows it alongside the consumer, not on behalf of them. So kudos to you and the brand. April, I'm kind of obsessed with Smack, personally. I am. Well, first and foremost, huge fan of Constance and the team there, and I think that very few folks can balance, you know, having production, both scripted and unscripted, under the fold, plus talent management, which you sort of touched on. So walk me through how you, in your role as COO, balance like what's commercially viable with what's culturally cool, and how you sort of go about making those decisions.
Yeah, we have to pay attention to trends, obviously, but we can't jump on them. Actually, and I agree with everything you said about your collabs, but we actually use collabs as it relates to like a Michael Strahan or Wear by Erin Andrews to do some of that testing and learning. We did a collab with Gracie Hunt, and we did one with Rebecca Minkoff. And for example, with Gracie Hunt, she's the daughter of the Hunt family that owns the Chiefs, and her style is very different than the core of Erin Andrews and the core of what our brand is, but we use that collab to sort of do some testing and have her design a collection that pushed the limits of what maybe we would do on a normal basis. We added some rhinestones, which is not necessarily what wear, the core of wear would be, and her style is like a little bit younger, a little bit sexier, and so we were able to create this capsule collection through Gracie's lens, and then put that out there with this collab, and then see how that did. And it actually did really well, and so that gave us a lot of information for what our core customer is interested in, what trends might be here to stay, and you know, what we can integrate into our core brand. So a lot of that testing and learning is important for the future, and to be able to make that connection across culture.
I love that. One of the things you all sort of touched on is, you know, testing and also culture. And culture moves really fast, especially now in this digital age. And so, Emily, maybe I would love to start with you. How do you identify what's a trend that has momentum and like will sustain versus something that's just hot in the moment? And you brought me right to it, because when you said fire, I feel like I learned Crashing Out this summer, and then it was like uncool right after. I was like, it's still not cool. And so like
now you say 6'7" all the time, which doesn't mean anything.
I just learned that
but
on
you
the
just
panel.
say it a lot, and you say it over and over and over again.
I'm learning it in real time. When you said fire, I was like, is fire still cool? Can I,
No,
like, so in the context of commerce, you guys keep us on our toes, clearly. As in the context of commerce, like walk me through how you sort of balance that decision making of speed and like trends versus like actually viability of commercialization.
Yeah. Well, look, in my personal life, if I would have figured this out, I could probably buy another house with all the money I've spent on trends, so don't do that. Advice for you who are much younger than me. I think in a brand like Mitchell & Ness, whose heritage is in vintage, so the brand up to a few years ago had all the authentic vintage rights for players, so we weren't playing in current rights. And all of you know in this business, like the rights you have to make is a very important part of the business. Now we're making current product. And so we also have to figure out, you know, we didn't have to think about trend as much when you're making a vintage jersey. You're making the actual jersey that was worn in 1972 by the player. Now we are making current product, and we are making retro-like product with current and retro rights. And so I'll give you a real example. We just had our sales meeting last week for fall of 26. So this is where we show all the product that we're going to go to market with for fall. And a lot of you probably see a big trend right now is tree camo, right? So this is a different spin on traditional camo. For our customer, probably a tree camo jersey is not right, but tree camo inside of the numbering of the jersey is a nice way to bring the trend in without being too overt and obvious. And I think, I mean, this is why merchants will never all be robots, because there is a feel that you have to have in merchandising to understand is colored denim a trend that's gonna last 3 months, or is this gonna last 5 years? Are skinny jeans gonna be around, or are they gonna go away? These are things that used to be when I was growing up in merchandising, you had to go to Europe and like sneak a camera in the room and take pictures. Now we just all have phones and you can look it up on the internet, but it was very different when I started. But it's important for all of you who care about trends and fashion and how they intersect with sport or anything else to be walking down the street and don't look at your phone. Look around. What are people wearing? How are they putting things together? I travel a lot, so when I go to the airport in Kansas City or Minneapolis or Columbus, people dress differently. And it's important to understand that and know how do I put these trends and insert them into my brand. So I would say for us, we are not a trend-forward brand, but as we are diving more into women's and more into current, we are trying to infuse more trend in what we do every day.
I love that. I would love to get your perspective on it as well, April. I love what you said, Emily. Before I go to you, April, it's like one of the things I love about Together, and when I joke that you all have so much power in this room, is like folks on our social and digital teams, they are able to spot trends and jump on it in a way that when we listen as leaders, the Stud Buds is a huge example of that. They found it, discovered it, and boom, immediately now it's like we were first to partner with someone who's clearly so impactful and draws so much. So April, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on how you all identify trends and either decide to follow them or, you know, they're not worth sort of jumping in at the moment.
Yeah, we hire young people to keep us up on trends. It's really the honest answer. But we have our, a production team. So the longer lead, clothing is done overseas, and maybe we wouldn't take as many chances on that. But we have some more domestic capabilities that allow us to move much faster. So and there are less quantities, less minimums, so we can jump on a trend quickly and not have the risk that comes with it if we were to jump on and make a huge commitment and do an import style. Yep. So I think we have set ourselves up to be a little bit more nimble so we can do that. And then if that ends up working, we can work it into the next season and make a commitment to it.
Absolutely. And Natalie, you sort of talked about how you've worked with creators and are actively surveying your audience to sort of identify your product market fit. Walk us through how else you sort of tactically have been able to grow as expansively as you have. I mean, you said when we talked earlier this week, you guys are in over 650 stores.
Yep, 650.
And you started the
5
business
years.
6 years ago. That's incredibly hard. As someone who sat in a venture board as an advisor on female founders, the first 5 years have been the most critical. So like I cannot express my awe of you, Natalie, for being 6 years and 650 stores. Like what has fueled that success?
Well, first of all, that's the team here. So if you see anybody on the Moolah team, give them a hand. But I'd say, just a quick comment on trend, because I can't help myself for something Emily said. I think the gamble is, what's the volume that you can move with the trend in the time, right? And like, will it stay? And so a great example is we came out with a Y2K pack in 2023. Yeah, summer of 2024, excuse me. And you have to make that decision a year in advance. And so you kind of see these inklings, right? This is like the Barbie movie just came out, and you're teetering this line of like, okay, it's popular in this pocket. Is this going to carry over to commercial America? Because we're commercial, 650 stores. And if it does, you're the only one that made that bet, you kind of win big, right? Because you're the first in line. And if it doesn't, if everyone says, oh, the Barbie movie, well, it didn't resonate, then yeah, you had it could look like your product wasn't there when really it was just the color design and whatever else it would go with. And so we made a bet that Y2K was going to stay. We saw some of the aesthetic coming through, and we said, you know what, let's do a Y2K pack. We ended up coming out with this like nuts pink leopard print triple double shoe, and we sold out like that. And so same thing too, guys, like the buyers kind of saw it, they saw why we were hedging this, and I think that what you said, the balance between like trend and commercial opportunity, it's just a fine line of like, are we talking about 2,000, are we talking about 200,000? And so we're able to find success in that way, but more than that, it's a feeling. when you put on a pair of shoes and when you put on Moolah, like, your product ends up winning, and that's why these brands have been around for a long time, because people have trusted Mitchell & Ness for 100 years, you know, and so we're hoping to continue that trust, and every single year you have to deliver the best performance product because people are so stuck in their ways, you know. I mean, everyone knows some of the big brands who I won't name on the stage, and they're, you know, it's hard to get them out of that beat, but the second they try it, we have to make sure we're delivering a performance and a fit that folks have never felt before, and one that they're pleasantly surprised by, for a price point that they feel like is competitive in a trend that is relevant to them. So to answer your question, you really have to do everything as a new brand, because people tend to look for reasons that you're not as good. You know, they want to look at, well, here's why what I was doing originally was better, and so you got to beat them on every corner.
I love that. Thank you for sharing, and again, congratulations on your continued success. I'm curious, Emily, maybe we could start with you. I feel like the industry has evolved so much, but April called out something that I really loved, where commerce and fashion has always been at the intersection of sports and culture, and I think it's easier for us to see it now, especially because we have phones in our hands and we sort of have access to it, and you can pick up on those trends. Where do you feel like the industry has evolved the most? And maybe we could start with you and go to April next.
I mean, I'll just start and say with women's, I think is the biggest place. But, you know, fashion has evolved a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. You know, it only used to be models who were on the cover of Vogue. It was people you mostly didn't know the names of. Madonna was the first celebrity to be ever on Vogue, and then it was a long time before it was sort of, these aren't regular people, but you know, celebrities or athletes. 30 years ago, someone like Kim Kardashian would not be on the cover of Vogue, or Simone Biles. It just was not a thing. And so I think fashion has really, really taken sports in as this is the face of culture in a lot of ways now, not just movie stars who win Oscars, but athletes. And I think particularly post-COVID, sitting in the front row of a basketball game or just going to a game and sitting anywhere has been like our clothes got very lonely in our closets. And they wanted to go out and play. And now they get to go to the game. And you know, for all of you who've been to a lot of games, which I've been to a lot of games now this year, yes, people are interested in what's going on, but they're also very interested in what each other are wearing. That's a big part. At some of the WNBA games, a part of the NBA games in the big cities. And so I think it's really fun to watch, and it's a new way for fashion to come alive, and a new way for people to celebrate and connect. You know, one of the things about Mitchell & Ness is that it's a true connector of people. And a lot of brands are like that. If you see somebody wearing a brand that you're really into that isn't maybe super mainstream, you have a connection with them. Sports do that, they make a connection. So the intersection of fashion and sports and culture takes it one step further to say like, oh, we both like the Eagles and we're both wearing this like cool Eagles rugby that I can also wear. I know you, I know something about you now. We have something in common. And I think it's pretty magical to find those things that can connect people in like real life ways. And I think that's what sports and fashion is really doing right now.
I love that. It's so true. I feel like I was watching America's Next Top Model, and all of us were like, that is the only way that you will be able to sort of see these worlds intersect, and that's not the case anymore. Yeah. April, you touched on a bit when we were connecting, like just how much it's happened, and people might not have recognized it or seen it for what it is. And I'm curious if you could talk a little bit more about your earliest inception of seeing this intersection crossover and how it's evolved over time as well.
Yeah, there had been, you know, some early collaborations, even with like Adidas Originals has been doing collaborations with designers really well for a really long time. But back in my IMG days, we recognized that there were athletes and musicians and people across culture starting to come to the fashion shows and sit front row. So it wasn't just editors. And so that is where we started to notice that there was this crossover happening. And then there were some, again, like all with collaborations, Gucci did a collaboration with the Yankees, and that was originated by Gucci, not the Yankees, back in 2018. But then, you know, some of the other teams started to get involved in leagues. So Paris Saint-Germain did a Bathing Ape collab in 2018 as well, and then did a Dior collab in 21. The NBA did their Vuitton collab in 2020. So there was this momentum that started to happen. And then, you know, fast forward to last year when the NFL ended up naming Kyle Smith as their fashion editor. And even Crystal Palace has a creative director that has a fashion lens. So this connection between fashion and sport is, you know, now in the forefront. And fashion's embracing it, which I think for a long time, you know, fashion as a whole may not have been, and they wanted to be, you know, very exclusive, but they were doing it to be different and recognizing how do we get into culture, and now it sort of has exploded. And yeah, and here we are. I think the front row of you know, the NBA or WNBA has become the front row of a fashion show. It's sort of the same thing going on, and the red carpet is now the tunnel walk, so it's all sort of coming together in a really big way, and now it's at the forefront.
I love that. I mean, I remember even prior to me joining, one of the things that really attracted me to Together and I loved was I'm one of those people that I have very little time, but I like to think I'm fashion forward. No one's ever actually said that to me. It's a self-coined identifier. Self-coined, truly. And I was watching Tunnel Fits that we were doing in partnership with TJ Maxx. And because I don't have a lot of time, I usually find myself like screenshotting the best outfits, and then I'll upload them to Amazon on like the little picture thing, and then replicating the outfits with a little Katiism in there. So I share all that to say that I do agree that Tunnel Fits has been either an introduction to the sports world if people haven't prior been there. There's an entire production that takes place with that. And now athletes, in my perspective, have turned the world into their runway, and I love that so much. Natalie, I'm curious to get your perspective on how sneaker wear has evolved. Not gonna lie, I'm a newfound sneaker girly because I think I jailbroke my feet with heels, and they're now boycotting. So I'm curious to hear like how you've capitalized on those trends and how it's evolved as well.
And now you're gonna be a newfound Moolah fam, right? There we go.
I'm in.
All right, the only ones that really fit your feet. So I would say with us, like, there's no question, sneaker culture in basketball is everything. You know, it's the hardest thing to make. It's the only piece of equipment that you need. And that's why it's the most important thing that you start with. And for us, I would say, even bigger than Moolah, we're not done making waves on what women's basketball sneaker culture has to be. We've had some really great momentum in the last 5 years. Since, I don't know, what happened 5 years ago? Like Moolah was founded or something? So we've had some great momentum since Moolah has entered the scene as a women's basketball sneaker culture in general. But one of the reasons that I started the company was that I saw an ad on East, can you guys raise your hand if you know what East Bay is? Okay, cool. So I saw an ad on East Bay that had 4 WNBA players holding out and promoting the sneakers that they wore on court, and all of them were NBA players. And I saw it and I thought, like, what is the message that we're saying here? It's that you can be the very best in your game, and you will still not only be wearing, but promoting someone else's game. And so there's a social message there, and there's a performance implication there, that when we wear these shoes, we're more at risk for knee, ankle, and leg injuries. And so I think where women's basketball, you know, clearly I only really comment on women's basketball sneaker culture, but where that's going is to a stage where we're always promoting our own game. Because we still have plenty of women in the W that are wearing LeBrons, Kobe's, KD's, Those are awesome players, but as we're growing our sport, we need all the self-promotion we can get, right? Like, you guys, yeah, I'm shameless about it. I'm gonna promote Moolah all I can. We're a startup, and women's basketball is the same way. When we have the stage, we have all these viewers watching us, we need to promote each other and our own game and create our own culture rather than piggybacking off of the men's culture. And so for us, that is the most important thing, is that whether or not it's Moolah, we're always out here promoting our own game and making sure that we're putting women's basketball first as a community.
I love that. I think selfishly, this is a Kati statement, not a data-backed statement, but I truly believe that women's sports have driven the conversation further in terms of what's cool, what's hot. They've driven impact through what they wear and where they wear it and the intentionality behind it. So I'm curious to get your thoughts, Emily, starting with you and all of you really, on how women's sports have really pushed the envelope in the apparel space and the commerce space.
So I'm sure you've all heard the phrase shrink it and pink it, which is like what the approach to women's sports apparel has been in the past. And it's like not great, right? We didn't have a lot of good options. No offense to the men in the audience. Women's fashion is just more exciting. It just is. We have more options. We are slightly more adventurous. This is just sort of the way fashion is. And so I think the introduction of women being not just athletes, but also showing their personality through fashion is really fun. And you see let's just take the W, you see the gamut of fashion, which is what I love about it. Everybody's not dressing the same way. They're not dressing by the same designers. It's very personal. And I think it's a way for us as fans to get to know them better as humans. You express your personality from what you put on your body. You're making a statement about yourself, especially when you have a lot of people helping you make that statement before you walk through the tunnel. And so I think that's really important. And I agree with you. I think we have to be self-promoting because nobody's going to do it for us. And so, shirts, the apparel of the WNBA, the apparel of women's sports, talking more about women's sports in fashion is really important. And I think the casualization of America helps this conversation a lot. I mean, before I started at Fanatics, I wouldn't have worn sneakers to work. It's so daring, I'm kind of old, and now that's okay. And so I think that helps our business a lot. And how do you show up for what you believe in and what you support as a part of your everyday? And so it's really fun to watch.
I absolutely love what you said. I started at Together 6 weeks ago, and when I started, my old boss, because I was prior at the Walt Disney Company, ESPN, and Hulu, he texted me and goes, "You own jeans?"
Right.
He never seen me in jeans, y'all, prior to that. I worked there for 10 years, mind you. And what I realized in that moment, Emily, to go back to what you were saying, is that working in women's sports actually gave me a sense of freedom that probably I'm hearing as well from working at Mitchell & Ness and Fanatics. April, curious to hear your thoughts on how you've seen women's sports sort of drive and push the conversation forward.
Yeah, I think it is like partly the fandom and women wanting different options. That was the shrink it and pink it was what we grew up wearing. Everything was either jersey, or it was pink, or it had rhinestones on it. And so that was sort of the impetus of Wear by Erin Andrews giving more fashion-forward options and women wanting that and wanting to integrate it into their own personal style. So I think we did drive that conversation for options in general, and then obviously fashion coming more to the forefront. But also, I think on the field as well, women's sports is just a different game. When you talk to Deanna Flores, who's one of our athletes, she's a flag football player, quarterback and gold medal winner from the Mexican flag football team. She will talk about how the women's flag football game is really different than the men's, and it's much more creative, and it's faster, and it's just different. So I think that as we talk about women's sports and as more people start to tune in, you'll see that creativity through their play and through their, their clothing and, their style and the fan style.
I love that. Natalie, women's sports and where you're placing your bets. Walk me through that, because you guys are in basketball. I know that there's a huge movement on the youth level all the way to the professional level. How do you sort of balance that wide spectrum from a business perspective?
We make, look, they upgraded me, guys. We make shoes that perform at the highest level to ensure that they will perform for a beginner as well. And I'd say that's our approach, is like, we have to set the gold standard, and then everyone else is going to want that. You know, even if you're playing 6th grade ball, you're like, no, I want the best. I want what's delivering on the pro court. And a fun fact about Moolah that no other brand can say is that our commercial shoes have been on the floor. So with a lot of pro sports, they make footwear specifically with a different process for the footwear that's going to be on the whatever professional court, and ours are made on the same production lines we were able to deliver. So that was one of our selling points, is that's the same quality all the way through. And how we see it growing and developing is with more people, more eyes on the highest level. We want more girls saying, oh my God, that's something I want to be. I want to be a Diana Flores. I want to be a Courtney Williams, you know, and getting in the game themselves at the youth level.
I love that so much. I know we're coming up on time here shortly, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on dream collaborations as you look at the future state. I mean, I am personally geeking out for 2026. I never say that. I always have a little bit of a mourning period of every year that passes, but 2026 kicks us off with Winter Olympics, and then we're off to the races until 2028 with Super Bowl being LA and then the Olympics coming back stateside. I'm curious to hear if you could whiteboard and dreamscape, what does dream collaborations look like for each of your respective brands?
We would really like to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the W in a big way next year, with bringing together the stars of the past and the stars of the present. I think there's a lot of fun things you could do around, you know, what's Caitlin Clark's favorite jersey from when she was coming up. Yeah. And so I'm excited to see if we can make something happen there.
I love that. So I'm a big anniversary girl, and Emily, I will be calling you, shamelessly. 2, I also love it because it goes back to paying tribute to what was, because right now, there's never been more eyeballs on the game. And we have to remember that even, you mentioned, Emily, like the United States is not that old. Next year's the 250th anniversary. So those two things even converging, I still remember making a film on the first WNBA team. The Lisa Leslies of the world, the Sue Birds of the world. Like, that is insane for us to now be in that. So I'm obsessed with this dream collaboration. I will be cheering from the sidelines. Hopefully I'm on the court side, not the sidelines, selfishly. How about you, April?
I might get some eye rolls for this, but for Wear by Erin Andrews, our dream collab would be Taylor Swift. She is
not an eye roll.
Well, she's a little, maybe overexposed in the NFL, but she has supported the brand a lot. She wore our windbreaker and our bomber, and they sold out immediately a couple years ago, so that would be huge for us. But I'm also super psyched for flag to be in the Olympics in LA 28 and the Professional Flag League with the NFL coming 27, so hopefully we'll be having our hands in that as well.
I'm not gonna lie, Diana Flores has inspired me to want to try flag football. Yes. I won't, but I love it. It honestly makes you believe that you can, and watching her and how she's sort of come into the scene and how Smack has backed her has been remarkable. So kudos to y'all. Natalie.
I love that. This is going to go back full circle, but our dream collab would be one of, like, these trends just, like, consume middle schoolers. And right now, it's a spray called Sol de Janeiro, if you guys know what that is. So our dream collab, okay, would be the ability to hop on, and yeah, this is the balance, trend versus commercial. Like, if we could quick turn a collab, Moolah times Sol de Janeiro, and it's a limited edition scent and the bottle, like, whatever the middle schoolers are into. I'm saying that now, today. We're going to have to understand, like, how quickly we could pull something off, because next year it'd be something different. But as I sit here today, it would be Sol de Janeiro, because they love it.
That's an amazing idea. I would have to buy many of those for my middle schooler.
I love that. Okay, we have 5 minutes, and thank you all so much for being here again and just being so engaged in the conversation. What are you excited about for the future?
I mean, it's like you said, it's a big year next year, particularly our brand, All Stars in Philly. It's the 200 for baseball. It's the 250th anniversary of the country, started in Philly. So we're very excited about celebrating the history of our brand. I'm selfishly excited. We're opening a new flagship store in Philly in April. It's going to be 3 levels, amazing. Really love letter to the city of Philadelphia, to Philadelphia sports, and to the heritage of the Mitchell & Ness brand that's been around for 120 years. And so I'm really excited about what that's going to bring just for my team. And I have somebody on my team who's worked for the brand for 46 years.
Oh, wow.
So there is like a passion and love and intensity in my brand that I've worked a lot of places I've never seen before, and I'm excited for us to be able to bring that to life in the city where we were founded.
I love that.
I'm really excited for 2 things, actually. One, what you guys have been doing in customizing athletic apparel for women and women's bodies. I think that's really important, and with the launch of flag football, there's an opportunity to cater the equipment and the apparel on field to women and to make sure that everything is customized. I think that is where this is going. People are starting to just realize that our bodies work differently. Emma Hayes is doing a lot of that work with U.S. Soccer, actually, and changing the way she's coaching and changing the recovery, muscle recovery and training for her team. But also wearables, I think, is going to be the future of sport and fashion converging. So you can actually see you're wearing clothing that has biometric, chips in it, so that you can see what am I doing, what am I wearing, when I'm performing my best, did I perform my best? And then you can connect it to what did I eat, how much did I sleep? So really maximizing your performance and being able to wear, clothing items and equipment that is really tracking every single thing that you're doing as the athlete to make sure you're always at peak performance.
I love that so much. I think there's so much to do with technology, whether it's from what we were talking about earlier with trends detection, with the human touch, and that of, younger and like more culturally tapped employees in the business, to even what we haven't seen yet and uncovered in this space. I got really geeked out this year when I saw that LVMH even came in to do something for women's sports. I'm like, okay, capsule collection, ready to unlock my wallet. So thank you for that, April. Natalie, what about you?
I'm just excited to get the word out because our product has never been better than it is this season. We were the first brand ever to debut gonna get a little techie here. We're the first brand ever to debut a dual density midsole and full TPU plate in our low top model, which basically means this is a technology that's only available in the highest performance running shoes. We're the first brand ever to put it on the basketball court this season. It came out 4 days ago. And so I'm excited for this season and for the word just to continue to get out there and create this groundswell where folks hear about the Moolah brand, our story, try our products, and let it speak for itself.
I love this, and I have no idea technically what that meant, but I got excited for it, y'all. It sounded like I need it because I do a lot of walking, and comfort is king. I know we have 1 minute left, but I remember vividly this year was my 10th graduating from college, and it was like, wow, blast from the past. We have a ton of college students sitting in this room, so if you could give them one piece of advice, whether it's personally or professionally, on how to navigate this industry, what would each of you say?
Oh my.
I threw you off. This was not prepared.
I know. Look, God, I wish I was 10 years out of college. That's fun. Look, this is a really fun business. And retail is about humans. It's about human beings. I grew up selling flowers at my dad's store, and there's a reason why you can sell roses for any amount of money at 5 o'clock on Valentine's Day, right? So if you don't love humans and you don't love understanding why they work the way you work, this is not the business for you. So I guess my advice would be, this is really fun, and I think it's a joy to be able to be in a business where sports makes people happy or really, really sad, but it makes you have an emotion. And fashion can change the way you feel about yourself that day. And that's a meaningful business to be in. So I would say, like, go for it and appreciate the fun that it is, and also have perspective on what we're doing. It's important to have that. But congrats for being in this room and being at the place in life you are. It's super exciting.
Thank you, Emily.
I would say just advice overall, regardless of the industry, is you don't need to know the whole path to get to your goal. You just need to know the next right move, one step at a time. My team asks me all the time, how did you get to where you are? How can I get to my goal? Well, I only know how I got here because I did it already. I didn't know every step. And you just take the opportunities as they come, and as long as you're learning and you're growing, you know, then you're on the right path. In the beginning of your career, you're going to be doing the mundane work, you're going to be working longer hours. Like, these are the investment years. Put in the work now, and be a sponge and soak everything up, and the rest is gonna come.
Also, bring us home, Natalie.
Sure, April said it, but you just have to always be ready. You know, I mean, sometimes it seems like, oh my God, we do it all the time, right? I worked 80 to 100 hours for 2 years before a shoe was done. And so there's so many times when you're like, well, same thing, oh, I've been doing this mundane, you're just ready for your shot. But I think there's a lot of beauty of putting your all in every single day and knowing that when that time comes, that's what gives you the confidence. Oh, I've been doing the in and out every day. And so it's not about, you know, so many people say, well, I want to put myself in there. Like, it will come. You know, your opportunity will come, and 5 minutes can honestly make or break you. And so I'd say just always be ready, because, like, we can't get too into it, but our first investment was I pitched Mark Cuban in a hotel gym at 10 p.m. at night. And you were ready. You gotta be ready. You gotta know the freight costs. You know, he sits you down, he asks, and that's it. And then we got him, and one thing to the next. And so that's what I say, like, your life can change in 5 minutes, but only if you're ready.
I love it. In summary, be a kind human. Don't be afraid to explore unexpected pathways. Shoot your shot. Columbia, thank you so much for being here. Emily, April, Natalie.